Hello everybody! Today I am going to run through Pokemon Emerald using only a shroomish. I don't know about you, but to me it hits right in the nostalgias. I clearly remember encountering one as I took my first steps in Petalburg Forest. Only now I noticed the similarities with last week's Pokemon. It has a very similar body shape to Gulpin, and the stats are not that different either. You might have noticed that the video length is a bit longer than usual. Well, I had a dumb idea, but we will talk about it in a little bit. Rules are mostly the usual ones: only use shroomish in combat, no use items, no cheats or glitches, and no evasion boosts. We will discuss the asterisks in due time. I chose the jolly nature to increase my speed and hopefully outspeed a couple of Pokémons later in the game. The lowered special attack was not the right choice, but not for the reason you're thinking about. You see, Shroomish lures Leech Seed at level 10, so why not defeat the game without using any moves that deal direct damage? Hey, I told you it was a dumb idea. Don't be mad at me. In the interest of time, I am going to speed up all the fights in the run, since they are extremely slow and not that interesting most of the time. At the start, we have access to only a couple of moves, so for now, Leech Seed and Stun Spore are going to be the only things we can use. May was kinda easy since she does not have much damage and we can stall her out. Shroomish? Never heard of that Pokemon. The first Team Aqua Grant is not that different. He also has only one Pokemon, but he can be a bit more dangerous since it can boost his attack with Howl, and eventually it could be able to hurt us a lot. But his AI is not very smart and just wastes turns until we defeat him. The next major fight is against Roxanne, and I would really like to have another way to deal damage. But unfortunately, Shroomish learns Poison Powder at level 28. I am not going to level up so much, and so we must defeat the Rock Gym leader using only Leech Seed. And because of that, I think I will not have enough VPs to stall her. To fix that problem, I gave Shroomish a Lepa Berry. It's an unusual held item unless you are doing something weird with a natural gift. There are much better choices, but I really don't want to use Struggle this run unless necessary. Roxanne is neutral against me, which is not the best, but could be worse. She still deals a good amount of damage with the Rock Tomb, but between paralysis and that move's bad accuracy, we can dodge it a good amount of times. This slow from Rock Tomb does not impact the fight too much, since my damage always happens at the end of the turn. When I get low, the Leppa Berry activates, and if I remember correctly, it was necessary since I was just a couple of PPs too short. Nosepass takes a little longer compared to the Geodudes, but goes down in the end all the same. I am not sure if I should include the Team Aqua guy in the video. He still has only one Pokemon, and the fight is the exact same as in the woods. Just paralyze him and wait for Leech Seed to sap his life force away. In retaliation, he spams Sand Attack. Accuracy is not super important to us because we don't have to land every single attack, but if it adds up, it could get bad. This time I'm not going to fight optional May, since she has a grass type, and I don't have anything to defeat it, since Leech Seed does not work on grass types. Next, I skipped Brawly, since I don't expect it to be easy or even doable anytime soon, and went straight into the next fight against the Team Aqua Grants. The first one is easy, since it can't hurt me too bad, and eventually I defeat him. The second one is a bit harder, because he has two Pokémons, and one of them is Zubat. For now, it can only be annoying with confusion, but in later fights it will be a bigger problem. Like for the accuracy drops, confusion is not the end of the world in this run, since I am spending most of my turns doing nothing anyway. But if I hit myself too much, it could get bad. After all, Leech Seed can only heal so much, and this mushroom cannot learn synthesis, which is fair since it's not a plant, but it's still inconvenient for me. Now I have to come clean and admit that I cheated a bit. I don't know about you, but I don't have all the time in the world, so I cheated in a bunch of rare candies. It doesn't really matter, since you can always level up against the wild Pokémons, but this video was already a struggle to publish in time as is. I should probably address the fact that I lost 21 times against May. She was very hard. Unfortunately, I don't have Spore yet, so I can't stall her efficiently, and had to level up quite a few times to leave the onslaught, and as you can see, even at almost twice her level, it's still extremely close, and I live on a single point of HP. Glad that's over. Time to take on Watson. I was expecting the Voltorb to be a pain, but after a couple of turns it just decided to blow up, so thank you I guess. I did not use a Cherry Berry, since I figured it would be kinda useless, because I will have to sit in front of the Magneton for a good number of turns, so it would paralyze me again for sure. Even if their electric attacks are resisted, the Magneton in particular can use Sonic Boom to chip off 20 HP every time, not to mention the fact that he can confuse me in any moment, and of course, since it is Steel type, Poison Powder can't do anything to it. At the very least, I can use Stun Spore to paralyze him, which is quite poetic, since he is the one doing the paralyzing on the regular. Manectric is not as scary, at least not immediately, and with half HP remaining, assuming that I don't get paralyzed too many times at the start, I should not have any issues defeating him. After we took care of Watson, we have to make our way to the volcano, where we meet Maxi and he kicks my butt a bit. His Camerupt can do a lot of damage to me, and I wanted to keep Shroomish level somewhat low, so I did not learn Spore yet, and I'm sure that made the fight a lot harder. Mightyena is not that dangerous, but generally does some damage by spamming Bite. The main obstacle is the Camerupt. He's super effective on me and can crit me often if he uses Focus Energy. Thankfully, once again, his AI is not the best and often uses Magnitude on me instead of spamming Ember. Of course, he potions it, so we have to sit here a little longer. Since Zubat is a poison type, I can't poison him either, and we have to spend a bunch of turns waiting for Leech Seed to take it out, while he destroys me with wing attack. This time I started with a lot of HP, so even if it gets quite close, I can manage to bring home the win. Up next is Flannery, and she also was very hard. That's not a surprise, since her whole team is super effective on me. I had to increase my level quite a bit to survive her attacks, and at level 54 I finally learned Spore, which is going to be extremely useful. With it, I can put them to sleep and stall so that Leech Seed can recover a good amount of health. With all of that said, overheat was not the main problem in this fight. I actually lost a lot more to poison from Slagma's smog, and that's why I have a Pechaberry equipped. Also, the wiki says that smog has a 30% chance of poison, but in my personal experience, I got poisoned every single time I got hit by it. That's why you can't rely on anecdotes as evidence for stuff. I am keeping growth on my moveset for now, not because it is useful, but just to spend time when I have nothing better to do. I could throw Pokeballs instead, but those get consumed every time you use them, even in trainer battles, so restocking them would get very annoying very fast. The poor Torkoal didn't even get the chance to use a single overhit on me. How sad. At this point, I have to admit that I forgot about him, but we are missing Brawly's gym. Even if this fight did not cause any resets, it does not mean that it was easy. There are two problems. Number one, they can set up with a bulk up and then do good damage to me. And number two is the Meditite. It's usually very easy since you can interrupt Focus Punch, but this time I'm unable to do so. Therefore, I have to tank multiple punches to the face. I have never been in a fight in real life, but that must hurt a lot. Last but not least, it's his ace Makuhita, and he can take me out if he sets up too much. I probably should have put him to sleep and recovered some HP, but I used Toxic instead, and because of that, it gets very close at the end. So yeah, skipping him earlier was the right choice. Next, we have to defeat our dad, and he is a bit of a pain. As usual, his damage output is very high, so much so that it causes a few losses, but not that many. So how is it going? All good? I personally am starting to lose my mind with this run. I genuinely don't know if this or the bide runs are worst. They both take forever, not as long as me editing the Pixelmon video though. Got him? Don't worry, it's coming. I just needed to write the script, so should be ready in a couple decades. If you're wondering why I'm rambling like a madman about other stuff, is because I have nothing to say about this fight. I should mention the fact that I did not use Toxic much because I am trying to recover more HP from Leech Seed so that when Slacking comes out, he does not one-shot me with Facade, and I have to restart the fight all over again. Lainoon is actually the scariest member of his team, because if he uses a belly drum, I can't deal with all his damage. Slacking turned out to not be a big deal. Most of the time he will use counter, which is totally useless against me, So I am just going to put him to sleep as often as I can and let the leech seed slowly chip him down. And with that, badge number 5 is in our pocket. After we get the surf TM and do the usual stuff in the Weather Institute, we have to fight May once again. This time, her team improved a lot, but so did we. Her lead Pelipper is maybe her strongest Pokemon, since it has Wing Attack, which is stab and super effective against us, as well as Supersonic to confuse us. I chose to spore her a lot to mitigate her damage. While it takes longer, it should leave me with more HP for the rest of her team. Combustion was easier than expected. The rain makes his Ember kinda weak. Double Kick does a bit more damage, but her AI does not use it much. And her best move is Peck, which is super effective, but does not have the base power needed to destroy us. Once the KFC goes down, she sends out Lombre. I can't Leech Seed him because he's a grass type, so I needed a good amount of HP left for him to take his attacks while Toxic takes it out. Thankfully, he does not have good moves, so in a few turns he goes down and we can proceed with the game. Quick reminder to like, share, subscribe, etc. Winona was a mess, but definitely not for the reason you're thinking about. No, it was not the immune Skarmory, no, it was not the Dragon Dancing Altaria, and no, it was not the Fat Pelican. The main problem is the damn Swablu. I never thought I would have to utter those words. While this time it seemed easy, it could end me at any second by using Perish Song or copying Toxic with Mirror Move. I am not saying that the rest of her team is easy by any means, but it's not what caused most of the resets. And even if her team was hard, it was one of the most entertaining fights of the run, just because I had to change strategy so many times during it. I couldn't use Leech Seed against Tropius, so my HP got kinda low, but Skarmory is not immune to it, so we can Leech Seed his HP away to restore ours, and thanks to Spore, it is unable to stop us as we recover more and more. Winona uses a potion, which is bad because the fight will take longer, but it's also good because we can get even more HP. Eventually, the Skarmory dies, and we can finally face her final Pokemon. Altaria is somewhat scary because if she manages to use a lot of Dragon Dances, she can do a lot of damage with flying moves. Also, she will be faster than us, which is not great because I can't reliably spore it. Eventually, it goes down too, and we are done with the 6th gym of the game. So I grabbed the Magma emblem and made my way to Groudon lair, where Maxi wakes it up with a blue orb, and since it's the wrong one, the legendary leaves and he attacks us. This time, he is not as bad. His team is still quite strong though. Mightyena, as usual, could be a pain with Swagger and Sand Attack. He takes a while because of potions, and I do a decent amount of damage to myself. Next is a Crobat, and he is very scary. He can outspeed me and chop me down with Air Cutter. So I had to stall with Spore and hope that Leech Seed would keep me in the game. It does not quite go as I hoped, because I can just barely recover enough HP to offset the damage he does every time he wakes up. After a little while, it finally expires, but he left me in a pretty bad situation, and now I have to fight the Camerat, which could easily take me out with a fire move or two. Thanks to Spore and bad I can buy enough time to regain some HP and be in a better spot. This fight took way longer than I wanted, but at least I did not have to reset. The next stop is in Lily Cove, where I decided to take on the optional May fight. This time is not for XP or to boast, but because she is guarding the entrance to the mall, and in there I can buy the TM for Protect, which might be useful later in the league. Pelipper, as usual, just wants to waste our time, but since we only do passive damage, it really does not matter if he uses Protect or not after we seeded her. Combustion this time is a bit more dangerous since it is not in the rain, but instead of using fire moves, it goes for bulk up and then pecks. I could have used Toxic and made the fight a bit shorter, but I wanted to reach her last Pokemon with as much SP as possible, because I can't use Leech Seed against the Ludicolo, so I just have to wait while Toxic kills it. Not long after we defeat May, we have to do the next gym fight, and this one was not easy. The fact that there are two enemies on the field has some advantages and disadvantages. I can Leech Seed and steal life from two Pokémons at the same time, but in exchange they can both attack me and do a lot of damage. To even have a chance to beat this gym, I had to abuse sleep and spore everything everywhere all at once. The bad news from this fight are not over, since they can lower my special defense by using Psychic, and if that happens, it's likely loss, since they would do too much damage for me to handle. You might have noticed in the previous fights that the gym leaders seem to use fewer potions than usual. I'm not sure why, but their AI does not seem to register the damage properly if it is all passive. Unfortunately for us, that does not apply to Tate and Liza, because they will use all of their potions at some point during the fight. Somehow, their first two Pokémons die at the same time, which is not great, because now the meteorites will have more chances to defeat me while I put them to sleep. This fight could have been easier if I did not make a huge mistake. In Lily Cove, there is a dude that gives you the rest TM. Since I'm not very smart, I did not pick it up, not only for this fight, but for the next few too. I only remembered about it just before starting the league. You see, rest is an extremely good move for this run for a few different reasons. First, it allows us to heal more, since Leech Seed is often not enough. Reason number two is the fact that you can cure status effects when you use it, and that would have probably saved a couple of resets here and there. And last but not least, while you are taking a nap, you don't have to use any move, which leads to less PP problems. Eventually, Tate and Liza run out of Pokémons, so we can get their badge. Next is the double fight with Steven, but I'm much less scared about this one. I was actually looking forward to it, because Steven does not have to follow our rules, and he can just attack normally, so this one should be much easier and faster. Team Magma's Pokémons are quite good against me, but I only have to make sure to not die, and with the Spore in my moveset, that should not be a tall ask. Once again, I don't respect sleep clauses and let Metang rampage through their team. I think the enemy AI knows that though, because it only focuses me, and once again, rest would have been very helpful in staying alive. It doesn't matter, and after a few more turns, Metang can defeat the last of their Pokémons to get us the win. Soon after we take care of Team Magma, we have to go deal with Archie in Kyogre's cave. He defeated me a couple of times, but overall is more or less the usual evil team fight. Since I still don't have rest, I had to play it kinda safe, because the Mightyena can do a lot of damage with his moves, and by making me hit myself in confusion. After Archie uses a potion, I feel confident enough in using Toxic to kill it faster. Crobat, like last time, is kinda scary, so we have to play safe some more. Do you like to eat mushrooms in real life? I personally don't like them very much, but I heard they have a very low calorie count. I used to go pick them up in the woods with family friends a while ago, and even had a poster in my room with the common species of mushrooms in my area. I don't know if I need to say this, but don't eat any mushrooms that you find unless you brought them to an expert first. Some of them are very toxic and you can't reset real life. Anyway, the red orb activates, Kyogre wakes up and leaves to pick a fight with Groudon. So as usual, we have to go wake up Rayquaza to save the Hoenn region. As far as number of resets, so far Shroomish is doing kinda well. It's super slow, but I expected to lose a lot more times. Time to fight Juan. He is not too bad since his type is not very good against us, except for the random ice move that he has. There are also a couple other annoyances. Ludwig is going to confuse you with either water pools or Zwinkies, and only now I realized that Tish Shroomish is a girl, so he and Flannery earlier can't infatuate me with Attract, which is a big bullet dodged. Other than that, the other big problem that caused a reset is the Kintra, because it stalled me out. I couldn't do enough damage to defeat it before it could use rest and regain all of the HP lost. I sat there for like 10 minutes fighting it until we both ran out of PPs, so I had to restart all over again. This time I managed to get a sleep with Spore just at the right time, and it lasts just long enough for Leech Seed to finally finish it off. The rest of the team goes a bit more smoothly, but I wanted to use Wishcash to get some HP back, so there is more stalling to be done, and in the meantime, Juan uses a hyper potion on the catfish. Once I reach full HP, I might as well use Toxic to speed up the process. And of course, I get confused by a random water pulse. How fun. Crodant can still take me out, so I wanted to at least wait out the confusion, but he uses Taunt. I did not want to restart the fight, so I threw Pokeballs at it. Technically, it breaks the no-use items in combat, but they literally do nothing. So since this is my video, I will allow it. Well, it took a while, but we finally have all the badges required to enter the league. Before we do, there is one more fight against Wally. In his team, he has a Rosalia, so I can't do any damage to it with the usual moves and had to use up all the PPs and defeat his team with struggle. Even if we can use a direct move, the fight is not easy because I don't have enough damage and they have the opportunity to really screw me over. Somehow, I managed to snatch a victory from the jaws of defeat, and we can move on to the first member of the Elite Four. Sidney was not as bad as I thought. As you might have understood by now, in these kind of runs, the most dangerous enemies are not the ones who do damage, but the ones who just want to mess with you. And Sidney is solidly in the second camp. There is also the fact that he has two grass types, against whom I can't use Leech Seed, so I will not be able to recover any HP against them, except for the fact that I finally remembered to get rest, so we can shrug off any status condition they happen to land on me. The Absol he sends out is kinda scary because it can use Sword Dance to increase his attack. I tried putting him to sleep, but then he activated my effect spore and got paralyzed, so I could not use any other status on it. Next is time for the two grass types. First is a Shiftry, who tries to use a bunch of double teams to dodge our attacks, but once we land a toxic, it's over for him. After the 3 dies, the cactus comes out, and the fight is pretty much the same. I use a toxic on it and wait for it to die too. He uses Cotton Spore to slow me down, which is not great, but since there is only one Pokemon left after him, I can endure it. I have to use a couple of rests because he can do a surprisingly good amount of damage with Feint Attack. Last but not least, we have to take down the Kronaast. He turned out to be quite strong. After a couple of sword dances, he deals a lot of damage, so I had to play it safer by sporing it multiple times, and after a few more turns, we have defeated the first member of the Elite Four. Next is Phoebe, and she is easy but impossible at the same time. I obviously don't have enough damage to get rid of the Dusclops in a short amount of time, so he has time to use Curse, and if he does, I am dead for sure. Thankfully, her AI is not the best, and does not use that move consistently. The rest of her team is not as problematic. The only thing could be the second Dusclops, if he gets a freeze with Ice Beam and it lasts for a long time until I die. Thankfully, it does not happen, so we are fine. The Banette uses a lot of grudges, but they don't work against us. I'm 90% sure that even if it dies that turn to Toxic or Leech Seed, the grudge would still not activate. Sablaye, unfortunately for him, can't do much damage. I should have used Toxic immediately, but I prolonged the fight for a while. Eventually, I poison him, and in a few more turns, it goes down to, except for the fact that she uses a full restore on it, so we have to start all over again. I guess I should be glad that she only used one and not all the 3 or 4 that she has. Eventually we reach her last Pokemon, This Banette is more offensive than the previous one, and that is good for us. I can just heal all the damage it does with rest and wait while Toxic takes it out. Two members down, two more to go. The next one is Glacia, and I was quite scared about her because ice versus grass is not in my favor. As expected, she defeated me a couple of times. Celio turned out to be more dangerous than I thought. I have to spore him because if I let him use Ice Ball, it will quickly defeat me. And then Glacia decided to use a full restore on it, so we have to spend a bunch more time in front of it. At least we can ignore the chip from Hail, since Leech Seed heals us back. I can't use rest since I'm full HP, so I have to waste some more PPs than I wanted. When the second Celio comes out, we have to restart the circus all over again. This one is a bit more immediately dangerous since it knows Blizzard, and I'm a lot more scared about the freeze than the damage. This time around, I don't get frozen, so we can keep stalling it out until it dies from the seeds. Next, she sends out her Ace Walrein. Here I have to play it very safe, since my HP is kinda low, and I'm sure that with a couple of hits or a crit, it can easily take me out. Spore does not keep it asleep for long, so every time I use a rest, I end up with the same amount of HP. Eventually, he takes a longer nap and I can get back to almost full HP. There are only the two Glalis left, but that does not mean that we are safe. He slows me down, and soon after he freezes me. Thankfully, I thaw out immediately, so it did not matter. This Glalie, like the Wolverine, is hyperactive and does not want to stay asleep, so it kinda gets close a couple of times. I am not confident enough to use Toxic, as I fear that he will take me out if I let him attack, so we have to spend some more time with this Glalie. After a long while, he goes down and we are finally at her last Pokemon. The situation is the same as with the previous Ice Ball. I have to put it to sleep and hope that he stays down so I can heal a bit, because right now there are way too many close calls. It takes a while, but we can bring her low enough, and she decides to blow herself up. Thank you, I guess. That saves some time. Next is Drake. I think he is the trainer that I was most worried about in the whole game, maybe second only to the champion. I dreamed of defeating the Shelgon before it could use Rock Tomb to slow me down, but that was never going to happen. I don't think I would have been faster than most of his Pokémons, but maybe some speed would have helped. Drake even uses a full restore on it, so this is going to take a while. I could have used Toxic after the potion, but Double Edge hurts and I want to save some health for the rest of his team. Flygon, as soon as it comes out, starts spamming Flamethrower. Thankfully, it does not do much damage, so I can put it to sleep. I did not want to use rest because I would still be asleep for the next Pokemon. In the end, I caved in and went to sleep, so as predicted, the Flygon dies before I can wake up. I put the Altaria to sleep, and he switches it out immediately because of the ability. So my Leech Seed lands on the Salamence. I can barely survive his attacks before going back to sleep. Luckily for me, he also takes a long nap, so I wake up before him and I'm ready to use Spore again. prolonging his suffering. Man, it must be embarrassing for a huge dragon to be defeated by a barely sentient fungus. Unlike earlier, the Altaria does not switch out as soon as I use a status move. I used Toxic to make it faster, but I almost had to regret that decision. He starts Dragon Dancing and he immediately becomes very scary. But it can't take me out before the Toxic finishes it off. Even if I defeat him, I'm left in a bad shape and I worry that the Kindra will stall me out. I'm able to use a rest before he finishes me, but while I sleep, he uses a smokescreen and starts to set up. He then gets a regular poison from Effect Spore, and now I'm actually scared. Thanks to rest, I managed to live a couple more turns until it dies, and with that we are done with Elite Four. As I mentioned earlier, I expected Wallace to be a hard fight. He has 6 Pokemon, they are all quite strong, and have a good number of super effective ice or poison moves. So, since the Wailord has Blizzard, I wanted to put it to sleep so it could not hit me, but it turns out it was not needed. Every time it was using it, he kept missing over and over. I swear I'm not cheating this time. Seeing that, I decided to go for Toxic after the full restore, and somehow defeated his lead without taking any damage. He immediately sends out Milotic, which is a bit weird since he usually saves it, but I think it's because it has Ice Beam, so Wallace sees the advantage and wants to use it. From previous experience, I know that Milotic is fully capable of stalling forever with Recover, so I used Toxic and eventually it will do more damage than he can recover, so I will be able to get through him. As predicted, he Recover stalled me for a long time, but once the Toxic builds up, he goes down too. I'm a bit surprised that Wallace did not use a full restore, but I'm glad he didn't. Tentacruel is also dangerous. I can recover from the Toxic with rest, but if he gets a couple of crits in a row with a Sludge Bomb, it could be bad. Of course, I can't use Toxic on it, since it's poison type, and I'm lucky that he has the Clear Body ability instead of the Liquid Tooth. Otherwise, I'm not sure if this would be possible. Wallace throws a full restore on it for good measure, so the Jellyfish too took a long time. Next, he sends out Ludicolo, and against him, I can't use Leech Seed, but since Toxic can stick, I just need to survive for a while. And given the fact that I have Rest and his move pool does not have any move that is good against us, this was very easy. He used a lot of double teams, but they don't matter as long as I can hit the Toxic once in a while. Wishcash was very easy. Against him I can use both Leech Seed and Toxic. At the start I was not sure what it would do, but when I realized he did not have anything for me, I landed a Toxic and waited while he passed away. Wallace uses another full restore, and those items are starting to get a bit annoying. They are making me spend a lot more time, and I'm also starting to run out of PPs. Gyarados is the last obstacle, and I thought he would set up with Dragon Dance and then blast me away like Team Rocket with a Hyper Beam. But instead it was content in spamming resisted earthquakes. So that climax was a bit of a letdown, but it's an ending nonetheless, and I'll take it. Overall, this run was not as bad as the bite ones, but I'm not going to do it again anytime soon. Thank you for watching, I hope you liked the video. It took forever to make it, so please leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell, and write something in the comments down below. See you next week. Bye!